Okay, welcome. Today I'm going to do my best Rick Beato here, and I want to talk about 6 underrated drummers. Okay, so there are so many drummers out there, and a lot of them just don't get the street cred that they deserve. Even the ones that play with some really big groups or that have played with really big groups over the years, you might not know who they are. You know the main artist, you know the singer, or maybe the lead guitarist, but some of the drummers kind of get swept under the rug. We all know about Neil Peart, and we know about Larry Mullen Jr., and we know about Phil Collins. These are some, big name drummers. But there's some guys out there that I think deserve some credit, and I wanted to just give them a nod here. So the first one we're going to look at is the longtime drummer for the Meters, and that is Zigaboo Modaliste. I've got a album here called Look Kapai Pai. This is one of their great albums. And Zigaboo is a funk drummer. Zigaboo inspired a lot of drummers out there. Rock drummers of all sorts. But probably he's known in drumming circles as being one of the funkiest drummers ever. So check out any of the Meters albums and listen to the drums, and you'll hear a really unique style that has inspired a lot of drummers. Okay, so the next one, this is actually somebody who a lot of people don't know about. He's my former drum teacher. I studied with Tony Thunder Smith in the late 90s, around 97. This is an album that he was on with the Jan Hammer group. You might know Jan Hammer from Miami Vice. He did the soundtrack. Here's Tony, a little caricature of Tony in the back. Tony, I think, sings on this album too. He's an incredible musician and started out as a fusion player. This album is one of the quintessential fusion albums. It's called Oh Yeah, and he inspired a lot of drummers. You'll find him also on the John McLaughlin with the One Truth Band. I've got this record as well. Incredible group here with Fernando Saunders on bass. And he's also on one of the early Santana albums. I think it might be the second or third. I think it's the second Santana album, but I'm not sure. So check out Tony Thunder Smith. He actually went on to play with Lou Reed for many years in the 90s. He was Lou Reed's both studio and touring drummer for a long time. The next guy I think is one of the greatest of all time, and that is Danny Serafine from Chicago. This is the first album called Chicago Transit Authority. And I think that Danny Serafine could be described as being the Buddy Rich of rock and roll. He tuned his drums really high. He tuned them kind of like Buddy Rich, like a jazz drummer. And he had the chops and just absolutely phenomenal. And I feel like Chicago kind of at some point turned into a pop band. And he kind of got, I think there were some stories about him getting thrown out of the band or treated unfairly. But he is absolutely one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Check out any of the old Chicago albums, like the Transit Authority album, or the first 3 or 4 albums, certainly. Next drummer, and this is another one of my all-time favorites. I feel like nobody knows about this guy except for drummers. Even drummers don't really talk about him too much. And that's Mark Brzezicki. I'm not exactly sure how you spell the last name, and that could be one of the reasons why people don't know about him. It's a little tricky to spell his name. But Mark Brzezicki was the drummer for many years with Big Country in the 80s. This is their seminal album. This is the first album, I believe, The Crossing, which is amazing. You'll hear him playing on it. And that's their most famous record. But if you really want to hear Mark Brzezicki, you can check out Steel Town. This is actually my favorite Big Country album. I think this demonstrates his playing incredibly well. Mark Brzezicki also plays on a couple of the Pete Townshend, the earlier Pete Townshend solo albums. So check those out too. I'm not sure which ones they are. You can do the research, but unbelievable drummer. If you're being hired by Pete Townshend as a studio guy, you know that you can play. Next guy is a drummer named Jamie Oldacker. And he's a guy that you don't hear mentioned very often, even amongst drummers. But if you listen to some of the 70s Eric Clapton stuff, this is the album Slow Hand. He's on this. And this album contains some of Clapton's best known tunes: Cocaine, Wonderful Tonight, Lay Down Sally. This guy is just really underrated. So check him out, Jamie Oldacker. Couple of drummers remaining. Okay, so I've got a Billy Joel album here. It's 52nd Street. Whether or not you like Billy Joel, you have to acknowledge that a lot of his work is, it just crosses a lot of different genres, right? He's got some ballads, he's got some Latin stuff, he's got some heavy hitting stuff. And the drummer was Liberty DeVito, who, in my opinion, is one of the most versatile rock drummers of all time, because he was able to pull off all of Billy Joel's music and pull it off well. And if you listen to interviews with Liberty DeVito, you'll hear that he started out in New York in a wedding band, and that kind of gave him a lot of the training to be able to play any style, and he wound up being the perfect fit for Billy Joel. So I don't listen to a whole lot of Billy Joel, but I think that Liberty DeVito is absolutely incredible, and I think he's underrated. People don't really talk about him enough. This has got to be one of the worst album covers of all time, but the drummer on this album is really fantastic. This is the Gino Vanelli album called A Storm at Sunup. The drummer on here is a guy named Graham Lear. So Graham Lear, I don't know that much about. He does play on this album. Gino Vanelli was kind of famous for having really good studio musicians on his albums. Graham Lear, I think after this album, or shortly afterwards, went on to play with Santana. So if you have the Moonflower album, I know he's playing on that. He's on some of the later 70s, maybe early 80s Santana albums, and he's just a phenomenal drummer. So check out anything by Graham Lear. So there you have it. Those are the underrated drummers I wanted to give a nod to today. And again, check out any records that these guys play on, because I think you'll be very impressed. Thanks so much.